Thank you, Megan. It's really great to be here. Like Megan said, I'm Katie Temple, and I work for the Western Environment Center. I've been in this position now for 10 years as the executive director, and I was a volunteer board member 5 years before that. So I have a little bit of experience with the organization. It's evolved a bit over time. So for today, when Megan and I were chatting about what this Lunch and Learn would be about, we thought it'd be nice to give an overview of our organization and also to do a little mini workshop at the end. So we'll see how that goes. There's a little bit of a fusion there. And I will say that I'm happy to take questions throughout. So feel free to unmute and just toss your questions to me. It's pretty casual, or you can put the questions in the chat, which I may or may not see because I'll be presenting. But Megan, if you feel like it's appropriate time to jump in with someone's chat question, that is totally fine. So we're gonna get started. I'll try to be efficient and I'll definitely leave time at the end. It would be nice to be interactive if we can. So here we are. So thank you, Food First, for having us. Uh, Western Environment Center and Food First have been partners for a long time. I know a lot of the staff at Food First, and it's really great to do things together. So thanks to you guys. Happy to do a lunch and learn. So who we are. So the Western Environment Center, we're a member-based organization. We have over 200 members, and we're a nonprofit community group based in Corner Brook, and we do some work in the region as a whole, but mainly based right here in the city. And our mission is to inspire a community of environmentally active citizens. So we really want to inspire and build our community to think environmentally proactively. And we do that mainly through education, through action. A lot of what we do is very active, and through public dialogue. So within that, the main things we do are running programs. So right now we have 7 ongoing programs, most of them very hands-on, focus on community food sustainability, and I'm going to run through those in a little bit more detail now. And then we do public dialogue as well, and that's all about general environmental issues. So our programs are really focused on food sustainability, but when we get engaged in public dialogue, we touch on some other environmental issues that are relevant in the community, mainly through our Green Drink speaker series, but sometimes also getting involved in public dialogue with media or at the community level. I also want to do a shout out to our partners. We're a small organization, small but very active, and we couldn't do what we do without the amazing collaboration with our community partners. So that could be, you can see a range there. That's not everybody who we've worked with over the years, but that's a good cross section there. So there's businesses, there's community centers, there's other community organizations, universities, schools. And so we have built up this amazing network within the Western region. And it's been phenomenal, really, to work with all these organizations and people over the past many years. So just to jump right into what we actually do, what's the bread and butter. So our 7 main programs are listed here, and I'm going to go into each of them in a bit more detail. So we have grown over time. So you can see it says we have 5 community gardens. So we started with 1 back in 2010, and because of the demand in the community, of the interest, we've been able to expand now to 5. There are other community gardens in this region, some of which we actually helped to start, but we run ourselves 5 of them. We also have expanded from 1 community compost program in 2017, and now in 2026, we have about 10 community composting programs. Some we run ourselves and some we run as partnerships. The Humber Valley Fruit Rescue is a really neat project. That's all about food waste. We have our food skills workshop series, our green drink speaker series. That's the one where we touch on a bunch of environmental issues through public dialogue, our community greenhouse, and the seed library. So this is 7 ongoing kind of focus points for where most of our energy and effort goes these days. So for our community gardens, essentially how they work, garden plots are rented for a small fee. We try to make everything as accessible as possible. So it could be an individual, it could be a family, it could be a whole group who rent a plot, and then they very independently take care of that themselves. They grow what they want. They have to sign an agreement, following basic guidelines, but essentially they take care of that plot with our support, of course. And then we host a number of work parties, and everyone is expected to attend at least one for the year to do some of that communal work and to really bring in that social aspect to the community gardens. So if any of you are familiar with Corner Brook and its neighborhoods, this is where the five gardens are located. Blow Me Down was the very first one in 2010, but now, of course, we have five. Currently, the Blow Me Down one is still completely covered in snow. Usually that's like right up next to the cross country ski club here in Corner Brook. So usually it's mid-May before we can get into that one. But the other ones, we've really had good snow melt now the past few days. I saw the first honeybee this morning in my garden, and the crocuses are coming up. So people will be itching to get in their gardens really soon. So for our community composting programs, so we run this as a completely free service to any household in Corner Brook, but we set them up in neighborhoods similar to our community gardens so that there would be like these hubs, which would be convenient to people, who are living close by. So a lot of people can, walk to their community garden, they can walk to the community compost program. Some local businesses also take advantage of the free service, but we mainly offer this to families, to households. We keep it as simple as possible. We really want to reduce the barriers to people composting. So essentially participants, they sign up and then they can drop off their kitchen scraps whenever they want to at their convenience. And then we maintain the composters. If they would like to become a volunteer with WEC, of course we encourage that, but there's no obligation whatsoever. They don't even have to become a member of our organization. It can be anybody in the community. We just ask that they let us know that they're going to sign up, and then we can maintain them pretty easily. Combination of staff, community gardeners, volunteers, interns, students, all contribute. It's a fairly low maintenance project. And so the sites are at all the community gardens that I listed, and then these other locations as well around the Western region, and some of those are partnerships, like I mentioned, and some of them we run independently, just us. And then the finished compost is used at our community garden. So there's a really nice loop there. We actually like create compost on site and then we use it in our gardens. So it's lovely. So our food skills workshop series, one of our most popular programs for sure. This is our 11th year running the workshop series. And again, like everything we do, we slowly expand over time. I think the first year we ran maybe 5 to 8 workshops, and now we run upwards of 20 or more per year. So it's a full mix of different food skills topics. I have a list on the next slide. But the purpose is really to help people like gain the confidence to dive into some of these topics. There's been huge like growing interest in a lot of different food topics, like gardening, like foraging, beekeeping, lots of those topics. And so we've seen that rise in interest. And so we've been trying to meet that need. And we take suggestions for topics that people are interested in, and we're really trying to tap into the local knowledge. So sometimes we bring in folks, from elsewhere, people with various expertise, but for the most part, we can easily find folks in this community who have those skills and who are eager to share with the general public. And I mentioned there, so most of our workshops are set up for the general public, but then sometimes we partner with like a school, a community center, and run a series of workshops for their particular population. And this is just a sample of the topics. We like dozens and dozens, really. Foraging has become really popular. Organic gardening, of course, there's a lot of different topics within that. And then we've touched on seed saving, food waste, various kinds, maple tapping. That's also there's a lot of interest in that. Sprouting and composting, sourdough bread. So we really base it on the time of year as much as possible. We do our workshops outside, uh, and we really base it on like what is appropriate for the season that we're in. Just a few photos. We're a pretty photogenic organization. We're always doing things that you can easily take beautiful pictures of. I should mention too here on the right, it's the cover of one of our manuals. So we have a database, a members portal on our website, and we have a whole range of workshop recordings. So we did have a project where we recorded a lot of our workshops and we posted them in a members portal, and also some other resources like manuals. So this is a seed starting manual, just an example of some of the resources that we have online. Our Humber Valley Fruit Rescue. So this is all about reducing food waste. So there's a lot of people in our community who have fruit trees of various kinds on their properties. And there's a lot of people who aren't able to or don't have the time or just don't want to harvest the fruit themselves. So they can easily contact us. We can send in volunteers. They do the pick, and then the harvest is split between the volunteers themselves. So that's a motivation for them. The homeowner gets a third, so that's a motivation as well if they want it. And then we donate the other one third to any organization that can take that fruit. So that could be food banks, soup kitchens, school food programs, and others. Couple pictures. So our Green Drink Speaker series, so this one is slightly different from the others in that all the others are the hands-on food programs. This is our kind of main public dialogue program. And essentially, we pair a community speaker and an academic speaker. So it is a partnership with Grenfell Campus. And so we come up with an environmental question. Sometimes it's pretty broad, sometimes more specific. And then we bring them together. They speak for 10 minutes. So it's no PowerPoint, it's not a lecture. And then we have 20 to 30 minutes for questions. So it's really nice, interactive conversation. We do 3 or 4 a year, and we touch on lots of different topics. So this is one from a couple years ago. What does energy justice mean in Newfoundland and Labrador? And we focus a lot of them on provincial or regional concerns. So a couple more here. How can we conserve biodiversity? And how can citizen science impact environmental policy? And again, like we go to the local community. We've been doing this speaker series since 2018. We almost always have people very knowledgeable here in the local area who can really speak to these issues. And we really get a lot of great feedback from the community on these. The whole list of topics we've done, they're all framed as questions, and they're all listed on our website if you're curious to know a little bit more. I'm just going to do a quick time check. 12:15. Okay, we're still good. So our newest project is the seed library. We launched that last year. So this poster is actually from last year, 2025. We launched it on Earth Day. And this is a great partnership with the Corner Brook Public Library. I do know there's like other seed libraries that have popped up across the province, and some of them I think have been ongoing for a while. But this is new for us. It's been about a year now. The library is super enthusiastic about it. They've been a fantastic partner. So they do the distribution, the organizing, the whole setup, and then we provide all the seeds, like the seed knowledge, and any educational materials. We do the promotion as well. And so again, like the community really loves this. We had a great launch event that was full last year. We also take donations of seeds, so it's really great to have that back and forth. So the seeds we provide usually are ones that we either buy ourselves, or this year we've been able to get donations from companies all across Canada. They set aside some of their seeds for organizations like ours. Focus mainly on local and heirloom and organic seeds. So the question about food security and the quality of seeds is a big part of the education of the seed library as well. And then there's some people in the community who save seeds, and so we encourage them if they have extra to donate, or even if people have purchased seeds themselves and have extra, then we encourage them to donate too. And so we put all the seeds in smaller packs because if you're a gardener, you buy a pack of seeds, there's usually way too many, you can't get through them all. So we've actually broken them down. And so gardener or well, yes, as gardeners, patrons, that's what they call them at the library, come in and then they get a nice manageable size of a seed pack. So that's been really fun. We essentially have given away all the seeds this year, put them in a month ago. Most of the seeds are gone. But again, because we have donations, we're still able to restock somewhat regularly. But all like the big amount that we had that we started with a month ago is already out to the community. So it's amazing. So I think this is the last program that I will talk about before we jump into our mini workshop portion. So this is our largest project to date. If you've been in Corner Brook, you may have seen the large growing dome, which is it's downtown, close to the mill, in the parking lot behind the Center for Research and Innovation, if you're familiar with that. And that was with support from the federal government, their local food infrastructure fund, as well as the city of Corner Brook, who's a big partner of ours. And the general overarching purpose is to engage community in sustainable agriculture, and we do that in a few ways. Here's a few photos so you can see the location there as it was being built. And it actually looks so much smaller on the outside. Everybody says, like, when they see it outside and then they walk in, they're surprised that it feels really spacious once you're in there. So you can see that on the right side. Obviously, there's no plants or soil in that picture yet, but it gives you a sense of how it looks like. And we've been running this now for a couple years, so there's lots of greenery in there right now. So, what do we do in there? So, overall, we offer educational programming. So, this year we have a Learn to Garden program with the Association for New Canadians. We're running that a couple times a week. The Autism Society, so we've offered them space in there, and then they're running their own gardening program with their community using their own staff. We also offer workshops in there. Sometimes we host them in the dome. We do tours and open houses so folks can contact us, whether they have like a work group or a class or, a field trip, there's something happening, they can contact us and we can give them a little run through the dome so they can see what it's all about. So this is the first year I've been able to hire a gardener. So our gardener Lee is also offering member times in there. So our members get to benefit from like open office hours. They can drop in, find out what's happening, ask any of their own gardening questions. So that's something new this year. And something else that's brand new is that we're going to be working with partners this year to create a social enterprise, growing produce and selling it as a fundraiser. And so we just hired an intern through the Center for Social Enterprise at the university, and they're going to help us with the business planning piece of it and some of the promotion. So that's a whole experiment for us, and we'll see how that goes over the next, I guess over the next few months, and then hopefully it'll continue into the future. So I think that's my last slide on Programming 20 after. I'm going to stop my share just for a minute. Okay. Here we are.
We do have
So,
one
oh, go ahead.
question. We do have
Was that
one
Megan?
question. Dean asked a question in the chat, sorry. Any chance the greenhouse was built from plants that can be made available, suitable plants for greenhouses for our climate and wind would be useful in many ways, I am sure.
So the greenhouse the exterior comes as a kit. So it was designed by a company in the United States called Growing Spaces, and they have been in that business for decades now, and they have an amazing website with lots of resources. But then there's a business counterpart in Canada called Arctic Acres. So we actually purchased it from Arctic Acres, and they provide support as well. So the plans, everything is included. The inside is all our own design. So like they provide all the information, resources. They can even like they recommend a carpenter, so we got a recommendation for a carpenter, and she actually flew down from Ontario, and so there's actually great support from them to actually build the thing. It's great for our climate. It was really intended for like cooler climates, and wind, so it needed to pass, all of the it needed to be engineer stamped, and we're in Corner Brook. I don't know where you are, Dean, but like we get good wind and good snow, and yeah, we get it all. Thaw, freeze, ice. Uh, and so the greenhouse, theoretically, I mean, depending on where you are and the effort you put in, I mean, you could run it year round, but we're totally off grid. We didn't want to add any supplemental electricity, so we can start growing in there probably early March, like just with the passive solar. And so we have passive solar fans, like exhaust and intake. And there's a pond in there which acts as a thermal mass. So there's a whole beautiful system that's intended to regulate the temperature. Um, and then, of course, the dome shape itself helps with things like wind and snow load, right? The snow slides right off, and then the wind. I mean, I'm not a physicist, and this technical things aren't my forte. But what I've learned in working in the dome is that it's really like an ideal and stable growing space. So yeah, we're not affected by wind or weather too bad. And Dean says he's on the Avalon. And he wondered if it was shareable. I might be able to share what I have. But again, like growing spaces and Arctic Acres would be like the best people to chat with first. Um, And then you can come back to me and I can dig through and see if I have documents from a few years ago. So I think that wraps that up. Anything else before I move on? It's totally worth it. Like it is a game changer, I have to say. Like greenhouses generally, I find are a game changer in Newfoundland. They require obviously more maintenance, more work, like more monitoring. But you can definitely grow things that you wouldn't be able to grow necessarily otherwise, or just extend the season. It's a totally different growing environment. Um, so as long as you're up to like the challenge of the maintenance of it, then yeah, it's worth it. All good, Megan? Okay. So I'm gonna jump into our little mini workshop here. And this is really just like a quick and dirty overview of like the things that I think about as I'm getting ready for spring. Um, I'm getting ready for getting out in my garden. So I'm gonna quickly cover seed starting, preparing and building your soil, and then best practices for a healthy garden. So it's 12:26. I can probably chat for about 15. And again, feel free to jump in with any questions. I just have one slide for each. So, seed starting. Whenever I talk to people who are getting into gardening and they really want to start seeds inside, I always get them to consider whether they actually want to start seeds inside, because there is a lot of considerations. Um, because we do live in a relatively, or in a place with a relatively short growing season, there are some vegetables that definitely benefit from starting inside. But of course, you need to have the right conditions. So I think some people take on seed starting and then realize, like, really quickly, like, it's a lot of work. They don't have the right conditions. So it's good to put a bit of thought into it in advance. So, for one, do you have space in your home? That would be actually good for growing plants. Is it going to get on your nerves after a while to have like a lot of small plants all over your house, or, taking up the sunniest corner? Because light is actually one of the most important things you have to consider. Do you even have enough light in your home? So a sunny window, south facing definitely is ideal. Or you could get grow lights. So if you don't have grow lights, you definitely need a sunny window. And if not, it's actually hardly worth it, because if you don't have enough light, your plants are just going to be weak and like they're going to be stretching for the light, like too tall and just not healthy. Because most of the vegetables that we attempt to grow as gardeners here are plants that actually need a lot of light. So they're not like house plants. So a lot of us have house plants. They usually thrive in the shade, they thrive with neglect, but houseplants are very different than seedlings. So seedlings actually need like lots of TLC, and light is a big part of it. And so timing as well, that's another consideration. Do you have the time to, pay attention to your plants, give them what they need, to water them, troubleshoot, to move them around? So for me, for example, I guess you saw in the background, so I have a bunch of seedlings in my window behind me because that's morning light, but then every day I have to move them to the other window because that gets afternoon sun. So I'm willing to do that. And you just need to consider whether that's you as well. And of course, you want to consider what you'd like to grow. So not everything you even need to start inside, and some things you shouldn't. Like if you want to grow peas and carrots and lettuce, you don't really need to start inside. And actually, you shouldn't. Those can very happily be started outside once the snow melts and the soil is workable. And you'll have actually better success with those kinds of plants if you grow them outside. Checking the timing is also really important because you don't want to start things like way too early and then you have these like huge seedlings that really want to get outside and there's still snow down. So you really need to like look into the timing of each plant. There's a really great resource that I use. It's from West Coast Seeds, and they've actually done regional planting charts for all of Canada where they find out like the approximate last frost date. And obviously in Newfoundland, especially, like it's kind of approximate. But it's good to know for your region when you think the last frost is going to be. And then you usually count backwards from there. Tomatoes, for example, you want to start 6 weeks before, squash 4 weeks. So you really need to look into what your particular plants need. And I'm happy to share that resource because it's for me a reference that I look at like every single year to remind myself. And then what do they need? Like if you've decided you're willing to take this on, what is it that they need? So fresh soil is especially important. Some people will buy a sterile soil mix just to reduce the risk of any pathogens. That's not absolutely critical, but that is useful because especially in the beginning, a seedling is really just going to use the nutrients from the seed itself. You don't need a ton of nutrients in that first batch of soil. Uh, you definitely need good drainage and consistent watering. So you don't want to have your roots sitting in lots of water. And you don't want to have them really like drying out much between watering. So you really want like good consistent watering. It should be moist but not soggy. You don't want a lot of sitting water. Um, and you also want really nice, like loose, fluffy soil as well. You really don't want to like compact your soil because you need, I said I have ventilation listed. So that's like actually within the soil itself, nice airflow within the soil. And also if you can get some kind of airflow for the plants as they grow, because that will help the seedlings grow nice and sturdy. If you plan to plant them outside later, they're going to have to get used to the Newfoundland wind. Very windy in my backyard, so it's nice to give them a little heads up that they're going to be in the wind pretty soon. And again, I'm emphasizing lots of light, so that's absolutely key. Um, so they, after a while, they are going to need nutrients. So you will want a light fertilizer. If you're transferring them into bigger pots as they get bigger, then you can add, like a potting soil mix with compost and things like that. So you really want to go easy on the fertilizer though, like the small plants, they don't need tons and tons of fertilizer. So usually you would water down your fertilizer before you add it. And compost, of course, is a great thing for them. And then the last step is something that some beginner gardeners just skip altogether. They don't realize. But once spring has arrived and the spring weather has arrived, I should say, and your plants are ready to go outside, you don't want to just one off take them from inside and put them outside because they'll get a pretty big shock. The sun will probably bleach them because the strength of the sun, like the intensity of inside versus outside is dramatic. Like even in a sunny window, it doesn't even compare to the intensity of the light outside. And plus, the temperature fluctuations, everything is going to give them a shock. So you need to very gently transition them to the outside. So that might mean, the first day you give them a half hour in the shade and then you bring them back inside. Then the next day you give them a few hours and then you start giving them a little bit of sunshine so that eventually they're getting really robust and they're really nice and strong. Maybe over a week, week and a half, they should be able to withstand whatever conditions that the Newfoundland climate is going to throw at them. You still might need to, like if they're very delicate plants, you still might need to occasionally cover them. We sometimes get like a surprise cold night, and so you still might need to, cover them with a little blanket or something. But for the most part, uh, they'll be nice and hardy once you do that hardening off process. So that's it for seed starting. Any questions? We have whole huge workshops, obviously, on all of these topics, so I'm just going through real quick. Okay, time check, 12:34, perfect. So another super important step is preparing and building your soil. So this can be a long and ongoing process. But the more I've gotten into gardening and the more workshops we do, the more I've realized how important soil health is, almost more than anything else. Is that essentially you want this thriving soil, like living system that is going to produce beautiful, healthy plants. And so if you're working with your garden, um, and helping to build this ecosystem, it will actually create a lot less work for you. So gardeners love to hear this because sometimes, I mean, even if you love gardening, you realize it's a lot of work. But there's a lot of ways to work using natural principles that will reduce the labor that you actually have to put in. So we've done a whole workshop on like preparing, building your soil. So what we have been recommending in recent workshops is to use a layering method to build your soil. So this can be done in your existing garden if you like, or if you're like building up a new bed. So ideally, for this, you would either like create a bit of a hill. I don't know if some people may have heard of hugelkultur, which is just a German word that describes like a hill, like a mound that you would grow in as a garden bed. And of course, here in Newfoundland, it's very popular to use raised beds. Um, and so this would be great for that. So we recommend for the bottom layer to use any kind of thick biodegradable material. You lay that on the area where you're going to want to grow, where you want your garden bed to be. That could be cardboard. Of course, remove anything that's not biodegradable. Remove the stickers and the tape and anything else. Any plastics. You could also use thick layers of leaves, thick paper, anything like that, and that will smother the grass and weeds underneath. So you don't have to start by like digging out the grass and digging out the weeds. If you use that layer, that'll be really helpful. And then once you have that down, then you layer materials with the concept is really to think about how nature creates soil. And it's multi-layers and it's seasonal, so certain things get laid down during certain seasons. Um, so we recommend for the first 2/3, we have some thick logs, possibly like partly rotten. If you imagine like in the woods, trees fall down, they start to rot. They're amazing at absorbing water. So it's a really nice, if you have this at the bottom of your bed, it's a really nice water source that like slowly breaks down over time, releasing nutrients. And then like maybe some small branches, a bunch of leaves, every year. You get the forest growing up, producing leaves, then dropping leaves, and then other things, coming down on top of it. Um, our head gardener, who's leading a lot of these workshops, she's a big fan of rocks because rocks actually provide minerals. So the first thing we usually do is like, we're digging out all the rocks, but some can definitely be left there. If you don't want rocks in the bottom of your bed, they are helpful. But if you don't want them, you can also use like a rock dust because it's really important mineral, say you're adding to the soil. You can put in a sprinkle of ash, wood ash, that's mimicking any natural, fires that are going through. And of course, anything bone meal, blood meal, manure, anything from the animals that you would imagine would be going through, wood chips. So any of those things that should fill like the first two-thirds. And then you have this like beautiful foundation that's slowly going to break down over time, releasing nutrients. And then on the top of that, you probably have about a foot and a half or so you want soil. So that could be a mix of things. You can sometimes buy like triple mix. You want a mix of like topsoil, compost, sand, perlite. So anything that your plants are going to be happy to grow in. And that's, it's a big variety depending on what you can get in the province. And then the very top would be a light mulch. So we always cover the soil. You never see bare soil in nature. If you do see bare soil and it's like dirt, it's struggling and it's not alive. Um, so we usually say, chopped up leaves or straw. Straw is often hard to get, but if you can access that, some people put some chopped up seaweed on their beds as a mulch. So this is really kind of our go-to recommended method now for our gardeners. Any comments? I know there's some pretty good gardeners, growers, farmers on the call. Any comments on before I jump into my last slide? Any questions? Was there anything else in the chat, Megan?
There's one question on do you have any resources on what seeds need to germinate? So books, websites, stuff of that nature.
Yeah, which ones to start inside? Yeah, well, this resource that I mentioned, I have it here. It's like dog-eared, and you can see I've used it. It's one sheet of paper and I've used it for the past bunch of years, and I'll share that. Excuse me, it's just a one pager. That's provided by West Coast Seeds. That's a seed company on the West Coast in BC. And so it's a regional planting chart, and they actually list, I know you can't see it, but like this side is all different vegetables, vegetable types. And it'll tell you like, do you need to, is it recommended to start them inside? Is it recommended to direct sow? So direct sow means to plant them outside when the soil is ready. And then it even tells you like, okay, if you should cover them once you put them outside. So it's like super helpful. So I'll share that. And if there's anything else, do you always do a follow-up email with resources, or what do you do after these lunch and learns?
Yes, we can do a follow-up and with
Okay,
the resources we chat about and kind of where we can find the recording and such.
great.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely resources out there, and I can find a couple of my favorites and share. So I just have one last slide, and then if there's any other questions, we can get into those. So this is essentially just the kind of best practices, principles that we really focus on these days when we're leading our workshops all about like natural gardening. So gardening, growing, that's really based on natural principles, the principles of nature that will really make you like a teammate in your garden rather than like the boss, or it'll reduce your struggle, it'll reduce the work. Sometimes there's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get into it, to me, like a lot of it feels very intuitive, like it feels like common sense once you start to think about it and you start practicing some of these things. So one of the things that we show people and tell people how to do is to ensure that you have activated living soil. So I talked about the difference between like soil and dirt. And dirt is really, I mean, you see bare dirt around all the time. It doesn't seem like there's much living in there at all. Not a lot can even grow there. But soil is this like living, breathing, like it's a whole ecosystem, it's a whole world in and of itself. And living, we mean that there's actually living things in it. So, your microorganisms and your insects and your fungi and all kinds of little things that are in there that are living and that are contributing to a robust growing environment. And so there's things you can do to make sure that your is activated and then stays that way. And so I talked about like layering your soil and building it up. So when you're starting from scratch, it may actually take a little bit of time for that system to become one, to actually bring in all those amazing creatures to build a fungal network. So that's really key in growing is to have your mycorrhizal fungal network. And that's actually your transport system. So you might have like all the nutrients, everything in there, but if there's no way for those nutrients to get to your plants, then it doesn't matter if they're there or not. They're not going to be able to access them. So you really need this network, this fungal network, to act as that transport system. And so that will happen over time naturally, but we also teach people like a pretty simple way to activate it. Our gardener, she feels if she feels like one of her garden beds needs a boost, she'll actually get some yeast. She'll activate the yeast, she'll add some molasses, as if she was making bread. And then she'll add that to the soil, and that sometimes gives it a kickstart. So sometimes it just requires patience, but you can also contribute to kind of kickstarting that kind of whole living system. So adding to the bacteria, the fungi, all the great stuff that's really going to help your garden grow better. So the other really important principle I touched on already is always cover your soil. So you're not going to see bare soil that's healthy in nature. If you do see bare soil, then you're going to see like weeds, plants immediately trying to come in there and grow to cover that up because they they're trying to prevent erosion and from the soil drying out, heating up too much. And so you can use dry mulches that I talked about before. Lots of different ways to do that with free resources or ones you can buy. You can have a living mulch, which is really just plants so you can grow as a ground cover, really nice green mulch. Some people call it green mulch, green manure sometimes too, because then if you like then dig it in, then it contributes to the nutrients. So that's absolutely key. So we recommend to people, we're actually doing a mulching workshop, like I'll focus on mulching this coming Thursday. Companion planting, so I'm not going to get into all the details of that, but that is also an amazing way to have plants grow to their optimum. So adding, for example, like different herbs, aromatic herbs, planting like amidst your vegetables, because often they can grow like there's a synergy and aromatic herbs in particular are going to repel a lot of those insects. So if you just have like one big row of one thing, if an insect comes along, then it's just like this feast, right? This banquet of this one plant and no protection around it. But a lot of times, excuse me, I'll plant like onions and leeks, like around other plants that might be more delicate, like beans, for example. That's some insects really like. And you can find out like what plants are friends, what plants really like to grow together. Um, and there's also peas and beans, for example, that actually make nutrients more bioavailable. So they actually fix nitrogen, which makes nitrogen more available to the plants that grow next to them. So there's lots of little interactions between plants. It's good to know some of that as you're planting a garden. Because even in a small space, right, you can grow a nice diverse bunch of plants that all support each other. And then the last point is learn what your weeds are telling you. We also have a workshop that we call like that's the name of the topic is what are your weeds telling you? Because I think like traditionally our first reaction to weeds is just like pull it out. Just haul it out as much as possible, even get the root out. And what I've been learning and what we've really been trying to bring across to people is rather than be immediately reactive, find out why that weed is there. What is that plant telling you about what it's doing? Is it growing a deep taproot, like a dandelion, for example, and trying to bring nutrients up to the surface. Maybe there's not enough nutrients that are bioavailable at the surface. And anything that grows a really long taproot is trying to bring up nutrients in the bottom. Is it a plant like a creeping buttercup that's like growing all over, like spreading because it's trying to hold on to the soil? The soil is probably eroding, or maybe it's drying out. And so the plants are trying to cover up that soil. So it's really a matter of like troubleshooting. So paying attention to what those weeds are communicating to you. And you don't necessarily need to leave them all there. But a new method that I use rather than pulling them out by the root, because that also very much disrupts your fungal network, right? Your living ecosystem underneath is disrupting your soil. I use chop and drop. And so it's a really fun, easy method. You just chop the weed right at the base of the soil, and then you can drop it right in the soil, and that can also act as a mulch because that will then slowly break down, and it's also covering the soil, and then eventually you'll have a healthy, thriving soil and an ecosystem where you don't need all these weeds to come in and remediate. Uh, and you'll be able to, with a little bit less work, a little bit less pain and struggle, you can have a really healthy, thriving garden that you're working with rather than fighting against. So that's my mini workshop, and I have my contact info right there and our website. We're on Facebook and we're on Instagram. We post pretty regularly. So you can get all our updates there. We have an email list as well. So especially if you're in this region or even if you're elsewhere and you want to keep up to date on what we're up to, we send one email a month, gives updates on our events, on our projects. We really don't like to overload people's inboxes, so we really try to keep it to just like a regular monthly so you can keep up to date on what we're doing.